All right. Well, I want to welcome Linda Bloom to the show. Thank you so much for joining us, Linda.
Well, I'm so pleased that you invited me. Good to be here.
Well, I'm just so excited because you are a best-selling author and you have been working with couples for how long now?
It's over 40 years. Yeah. I've been in the field a long time and
Wow.
I've been seeing a lot of couples struggle. And it's very gratifying to see them break through and learn the skills that they need to have wonderful relationships. And I get a big kick out of thinking about the next generations, that the kids growing up in those families are going to have a model of a working partnership where people negotiate for their needs, and they've developed qualities that you need to have to be eligible for a great relationship: patience, kindness, compassion, courage. Well, it's a growth model and it works.
That's awesome. That's awesome. How in the world did you get into this work?
Well, I'm trained as a psychiatric social worker, so is my husband too. And we both went to wonderful academic training for 2 years master's degrees when we were young and in our 20s. But all the things that we learned about therapy and healing didn't hold us in really good stead when we hit a really rough patch in our own relationship. And so we were in the trenches. Fortunately, we got some good help. And I'm a big believer in that phrase of let your wound be your gift to your community. And so when we learned about how to handle differences and negotiate for our needs and a higher level of conflict management skills and relationship skills, I felt a certain impulse, even a mandate to pay it forward because we got such good help and I wanted to pass it along to other people that needed it.
Wow. Wow. So it was really you wanted to give what you had gotten.
That's right.
Wow. And so for 40 years. Now your husband, he's doing it too, or he has a little
Yes.
different angle?
Yes. People sometimes like to see us for the counseling sessions together because not only do they get the male and the female point of view, they get the introvert and the extrovert point of view. And they get Mr. Spontaneity and they get Ms. Form and Structure. So my husband and I are really different. So we're the walking, talking, living proof of you can be very different and you can be really strong about your differences, but you just need to create a big space, to respect the differences and learn from the differences.
Wow. And you guys have how many years under your belt together now?
Next month, we're going to be together 53 years.
Oh, wow. That is such a blessing.
Yeah, and we're happy. Some couples get to be
Yes.
together for a long time,
Yes.
but they're enduring it.
Yeah.
And we're just really digging on each other. And we're very much in love still. So I think that's one of the reasons that people are drawn to the work that we do and the workshops that we teach and our books and blogs because they know that we're the voice of experience. We kind of fill in. For some people didn't have any wise elders in their family.
Absolutely.
They
Yes.
parents, they didn't have an aunt or an uncle or grandma or
Yeah.
granddaddy. And so people were really hungry for models. And I get the biggest kick out of being a model for people to take what they learn from us and then make it their own and put their
Yeah.
own unique touches on it.
Yeah. That's cool. So you guys have always you're saying y'all had to work it out. You hadn't always been happy and in love and in eternal bliss, have you?
No, we haven't. We hit some really rough times. Um, the addiction of choice was work addiction. And my husband was a corporate guy for a while. And so for about 5 years, he was lost in this corporate world where he was into achieving and competing. And he got a little hard hearted during that time. And when there's an addiction going on, there's a codependent. And I was the good codependent, enabling it because part of it was I was proud of the work that he was doing. But it took a terrible toll on our marriage and family life. I missed him terribly. He was on the road 3 weeks out of every month. The kids missed him terribly. And it came down to the wire where I just didn't think I could hold on anymore. And it was all but call the divorce lawyer. I mean, we were fighting so much and I was crying so much. And just in the nick of time, he resigned from the company. And that's when we decided we're going to have our own business and we're going to create our own dream. And we're not going to have anybody telling us what our schedule's going to be. So we could prioritize relationship and family life.
Wow.
And we've had a really good time doing it. It's a good thing that I didn't know what teaching seminars, how competitive it was in the San Francisco Bay Area, because we're in consciousness central here. If
Yeah.
I had known what we were getting into when we decided we were going to run our own business, I wouldn't have had the nerve to do it. But I was naive back then.
Well, it sounds like it, you survived. And boy, that was a big gutsy move of his. I mean, that was huge to quit his job just for his family. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And so now the result of that decision has led to many, many more years of happiness, even though it hadn't been easy, but it's definitely contributed. So it really, the time you're just talking about, when you don't spend time together, that you really do grow apart. And what you had before, that love that you had and passion and excitement, turns into hatred.
You're absolutely right. We had 12 years where we just had ordinary challenges. And then when he took this big, challenging corporate position, our relationship went down, 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 down. And we really, the love that we had was eroding away with all the terrible fighting that we did. And we were dirty fighters. I called him names. I insulted him. I said, "You're a bad husband. You're a bad father. You're out of integrity, teaching about integrity when you're on the road, and you're not living it. You don't walk your own talk." And he was just as nasty back with me, and just deteriorated our relationship. But we learned about the things that are destructive. And in the nick of time, we got some really good help.
Oh, so you went to therapy?
Well, we went to spiritual teachers and
Okay.
workshops.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was extraordinarily helpful to us.
Mm-hmm.
We had some people that we really trusted. We read their books and done workshops with them before, and they were in the graduating class ahead of us. And so they were able to give us good guidance. And I will be grateful all my days for what I learned from Stephen Levine. He's passed out
Oh,
of.
Stephen Levine. Yeah.
Oh, well, he was there for us when we were hanging by threads. And I thought he was going to confront my husband for being such a workaholic, and he nailed me to the wall. And he said, "You're pretty attached to what you think this marriage has to look like. I think you've got some work to do with non-attachment." And he was bang on, because I was being very controlling and very judgmental and critical and attempting to form my husband into the romantic image
Right.
that I thought a good husband and a good father was supposed to
Right.
be. And the more I pushed, the more he pushed back. The more I tried to control, the more he was insistent that he wasn't going to be controlled. And
Mm-hmm.
so letting go is so hard. Some people have an easier time. I'm good on commitment and hanging in there. My husband's much better at letting go. But that was one of the profound teachings about let it alone, let it be, let it play itself out. He had
Mm-hmm.
something he had to prove about his professional competence. He had to play that competitive game and achieve. And then after he played it out, he settled down.
He was okay.
Yeah.
So you had to be on the back burner in the process.
Oh man, I didn't like being delegated down to lower realms. I wanted to be number one, and I thought I deserved to be number one.
Well, you're the wife. You're right. You're the queen, right? Hey.
I'm number one now. I've been enjoying a golden age
That's
for
good. Well,
quite a long time.
that's wonderful. Wonderful. Well, you had to fight for it. I tell you, you sound like you won that fight.
Yes, I fought for it, and a lot of the fight was inside myself.
Mm,
There was a part of me that knew that to be patient and allow him to play it out was important, but hanging in there when I missed him terribly, when I was a pretty staunch feminist, and we had a firm agreement that we were going to raise those kids together.
mm,
And here I was, like a 50s wife,
mm,
doing all the childcare and all the housework.
mm.
And we had an agreement that we were going to mutually support each other's careers. And my career is really important to me. And
Right.
I felt like the children needed one parent at home, and my career had to take a real back seat for a while. And
Mm.
I'm not happy about that.
Wow. Wow. So you had to fight to get back in the front seat
Yes, and I
and work with
really
yourself. I'm hearing you
enjoyed.
say you also had to work with yourself to be patient.
That's where most of the work takes place. People talk about working on the relationship. Really, a lot of it is working with our own self, with our own wounds from childhood,
Mm,
previous adult relationships. It really is, growing up and maturing and deepening, I think, a more evolved version of ourselves.
mhm. So did you guys have great examples from your parents?
No,
Mm,
no. Charlie's parents divorced. By the time they got divorced, he had been wishing and hoping and praying for years that they would, because they were so incompatible. My parents didn't divorce, but um, they really weren't happy together, and they stuck it out. And so we came into the relationship with each other just young, in our very early 20s. We met in college, um, with a huge learning deficit. And I always try to assure my clients it isn't necessarily some very deep seated psychopathology that's interfering with your relationship being delightful and fulfilling for you. It may just be some learning deficits. A lot of us didn't get good models growing up, and we need to find models and put a collage together. We like this about this couple, and we like that about that couple, and use our imagination and let our imagination be big. That will take us away. And in my field, there's a controversy about lowering your expectations, and then you won't be so disappointed if they're not met. And I'm not a believer in that. I say let your imagination be, have grand expectations, go for the gold, as long as you have the commitment and the determination and the intention to do the work that's
mm,
required to discover what your sore spots are and heal them. And your,
mhm,
your relationship's going to bring all that up, and grow the qualities and master the skills and fill in the holes where your family may not have given you the best start, and
mm,
practice forgiveness to the family of origin who in many ways may have failed us, because they did the best they could.
mm,
And if they'd known better, they would have showed us better, and they would have taught us better. And their parents didn't teach them.
mm.
But it can stop in this generation, and we could hand on something
Right.
different to our
Yes.
kids.
Yes. Absolutely. That's beautiful. Um, it's a fight. It's a struggle. So it sounds like your struggle, your fight, um, is something that kind of led into your your books, so tell us about your books. Tell us how that was inspired, and you know, I think you have one entitled 101 Things I Wish I Knew When I Got Married. Simple lessons to make love last. So,
Mhm.
Avi, so what got you, what inspired these books, and what's in them? Why do people need to read them?
The 101 Things I Wish I Knew When I Got Married is very reader friendly. So if people are busy, raising kids and raising their career, and they only read the table of contents, you get the whole power of the book because we distilled some of the most important things that we learned, 101 of them, down to single lines. Here's one of my favorites. One of the great gifts that you give your partner is your own happiness. And another one that's a favorite of mine is one of the most important questions that you ask your partner is, how may I best love you? Yeah. And so the way this book came about is my husband was asked to speak at his sister's wedding. And so he's going all through all kinds of books of poetry to see if he can find something lovely to offer in this ceremony. And each one of the things that he read were addressing one item about marriage. And so I said, well, why don't you just write something yourself? And so he came up with the things that he wished that he had some wise relative, father, mother, sister, brother, aunt, uncle, grandma, granddaddy, and he wrote those down. And there were about 20 of them. And so he spoke them and he really delivered them with a powerful presentation. And people were, really impressed, elbowing each other, like, I've been trying to tell you that. And he totally upstaged the minister. And after the wedding, people said, could I have a copy of that? You should publish that. That's something. And so this was in Los Angeles where my sister-in-law's wedding was. So all the way back from where we were living in Sonoma up in wine country, we started coming up with more of them and more of them and more of them and more of them. And I'm taking notes. We ended up ultimately with 300 and we couldn't write a big heavy tome. So we narrowed it down to the 101 most important ones.
Mm,
That's the big seller. That's the one we've sold over 100,000 copies.
that's wow. Wow.
Yeah. And then after we read that we could do well with that book, we said, we know some really happy couples. Let's interview them. Now, for years, we had been seeing the troubled couples. So you can get really sad and a little toxic with seeing a steady diet of people who are struggling, struggling, struggling. We thought, what an antidote to all these years we'll be seeing the struggling couples. Let's go find the happiest couples that we know.
Mhm.
And they knew couples, and they would introduce us to the really happy couples that they knew. And so we interviewed them and we narrowed it down to the 27 couples that illustrated the points that we wanted to make about commitment, about forgiveness, about showing up, about being willing to look at yourself, about being more responsible. And so we let those couples tell their secrets of success in their own words. And so this allows models for the people who are searching for them to pick and choose among the couples about what they like from each one of them.
Mhm.
One of the couples had a very broken down marriage, got divorced, were divorced for 3 years, and fell in love and got married again. I
Mm.
love this story because their sons performed the wedding ceremony when they
Oh,
got
wow.
married the second time. It's very sweet.
Wow.
I have a favorite one in that collection too, and this is Mariah Gladys and her husband Ron. She was diagnosed with a horrible disease as a young woman, and they hadn't even gotten married yet. She was diagnosed with Lou Gehrig's disease. People only usually live for a few years. She lived more than 25 years.
Wow. Who
And I
cares?
asked her, you're a walking, talking miracle. How do you account for this? And she said, it's him. He believed that I could live.
Mm.
We were all in tears. My husband was in tears, Ron was in tears, Mariah.
Mhm.
And then the book that we wrote after that one was about myths, about the romantic myths that people have. One of my favorite that I was caught up in for a long time was, if he really loved me, he'd know what I wanted and I wouldn't have to ask. That's the myth of mind reading. Got me in trouble for a long time. And I finally realized that I had to get vulnerable and ask for what I needed. I didn't always get it, but it really increased the chances if I would ask. I had to really know myself well enough to know what would light me up. And often when I was vulnerable, that invited his vulnerability and generosity. And so there are a lot of places where people are just operating from these myths and they're tripping them up and they don't even know why they get in trouble. Now, book number 4 was the memoir. And we wrote the gory story about when we almost lost our marriage and how we pulled it out of the fire. So it's a gory story, but it has a really happy ending.
Wow. Wow. And you're giving away 3 books?
Yes, yes, they're ebooks, and when people go to our website and they give us their email address, they can get the 10 most popular things that we learned since we've got married. We narrowed down the 101 to the 10 most important.
Okay.
There's there's an excerpt from our new book that we're going to be taking in next year, which is about conflict. The ebook is called An End to Arguing. And then there's the third ebook was about sexuality, about how to keep the spark alive over the years in your partnership. So
Wow.
there's a lot of good, juicy, practical material in all the ebooks.
Well, that is wonderful that you're giving that good stuff away. And I guess that you have to go to bloomwork.com.
Yes.
Bloomwork.com. Well,
There's
wow.
a free store on our website.
Okay.
So people can get to our blogs and they can read things on the web. There's the 3 ebooks there. We have recommended reading list and over 100 videos on our YouTube channel.
Wow. That's awesome. Awesome, Linda. Man. Boy, time is up. Well, we could go on for a little while with this. I just love hearing you share your stories, your experience, Linda. Thank you so much for just giving yourself to the world, giving you and your husband Charles to giving yourselves to the world and making yourselves vulnerable and putting it all out there on the line. And I'm so glad you're still doing it after 40 years and still taking clients, huh?
Still taking clients, teaching at Esalen. If any of your listening audience want to come, it's the Halloween weekend. We're going to be teaching Friday, Saturday, Sunday in Big Sur.
Okay.
People come from all over the country. We
Okay.
teach at Kripalu too, up in the Berkshire Mountains in Massachusetts. So
What
people
school?
always
What program
find
or school was that? You said Esalen Institute.
Esalen Institute. We've been teaching there for years, and we've been teaching a long time at Kripalu in Massachusetts.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Well, I'm so glad you have so much to offer, and we're just so thankful that you were able to be on our show, and looking forward to maybe having you again.
Oh boy, I'd
It's,
love that.
it's been
I like your questions.
yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Well,
All
folks,
right.
that's Linda Bloom. She's a best-selling author and has just blessed so many people. We're just so glad to have her have blessed us today. Uh, so we'll make sure we stay in touch. Okay, Linda?
All right, be well.
All right.